This is a weekly broadcast where we share unconventional wellness ideas, courageous conversations about perseverance, authenticity, and reclaiming our power as modern mindful women. Hey, Sonia, how are you?
I am wonderful, Cynthia. Beautiful day out today.
It is. I am outside. You might see me dabbing my face because it's a little warmer, a little steamier out here than I'm used to. But it is a beautiful day and want to enjoy being out and grounding myself here in this space. So how you get to be nice and comfy there in the AC. I don't have AC inside. Enjoying the AC. Smart girl. Yeah, I share this space with my husband, and there's like chaos going on because we're getting ready to go on a trip, and you know how that mess goes. You're trying to clean the house, and it's like disaster before you actually get going anywhere.
Yeah, calm before the storm going on, huh?
Calm before the storm. So we are excited. We are in the month of June. This is, we celebrate and honor the fathers in our lives, whether they are a father figure to us, our biological fathers, whether here or on the other side. But because this is a show for women, we definitely want to make a special nod to the women who have to play both roles. There's, unfortunately, that's a common scenario for so many of us, having to step in and fill both shoes and be both parents to our children. That's not my scenario. I have two littles under the age of 10, but I have many friends like my dear friend here who have had to walk that path. And I'm going to hand it over to Sonia to share a little bit about what that's like, because you're not at the beginning of that. You are now in a different stage. So, it comes with a complex set of rules, expectations, because we're, coming off of the last shows of navigating expectations and relationships. How do we manage our self-care? How do we find balance when we're having to navigate not only relationship as mothers, but having to fill the shoes of the other parent and having to do that balancing act? So Sonia, do you want to, share some of the things that have helped you and supported you, and, see how we can honor the women in the audience who also have walked that path?
Absolutely. I really want to talk about soul parenting or separated parenting, absent parenting, step parenting, right? There's so many different levels of parenting singly that there's a lot of dynamics, and I have been divorced now for, 11 years, and went through all of the different stages through it. But in the beginning, just soul parenting, I really found that in the beginning, my child, it's really wild, the dynamics that change in the family with siblings, with the other parent that's not
We
living.
lost Sonia for a minute. So we'll get her back here and just.
I can see and hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Cynthia. Cynthia? So the dynamics of soul parenting, there's so many phases that you go through, but in the beginning, my son and I both of my sons developed a really close bond with each other. And that seems to happen in soul parenting, right? Where they develop it more with one adult than the other. And it's really not a good place to be. you want to make sure that you're always honoring the other adult. And if that is not possible, that you have friends, relatives around you to help with these parenting issues, because they're going to come up and you can't do them by yourself. You can't figure all of this out by yourself. And there's so many strategies out there that you can tap into and support groups to actually help. But the important part is just not to involve the child in the conflict, you know, between the separated parents. A positive relationship between both of the parents and their child should be really protected and kept separate from the conflict with the parents. And it's really hard to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
So, and that's because, so this is the thing, and it's interesting that we're, you know, it's always interesting to me how the universe orchestrates certain situations and conversations leading up to us bringing these topics up. Because this weekend, I had the opportunity to spend time with my family. So my niece, my sister's daughter, is promoting to high school, right? So we got together, and my sister-in-law's daughter's the same age, so same kind of thing. Not to divulge all her stuff, but you know, she is a single parent, and she came out of a very toxic relationship. And the conversation that we had, you know, still honoring her privacy, had a lot to do with trying to manage the experience that her kids were having to grow through, and how she thinks it's affecting them, and how we really, as mothers, whether we're single parents or we're not, how we do our best and we think that shielding them is protecting them, or shielding them is going to serve them in not having to not navigate the world with the same level of trauma that we did, right? When in fact, it's a disservice to our children not to equip them to feel safe in those uncertain situations, right? So this is kind of why we have these difficulties in managing our relationships, because it's hard to be able to handle what we are experiencing as individuals with the relationship of the person that we're now separated from, right? And then having to nurture what is going on with our children, and let alone have space to nurture and understand what we're processing. Because it's, you know, and it's fascinating to me how like this shows up in the people that come to find me for consultations, and how it's like so many parallels. It's like, it's so bizarre how strategically they have been placed to give me a certain level of awareness to bring to these kind of forums and have these kinds of conversations, because it's important for us to be able to navigate what's going on with us and give ourselves permission to do so. So, you know, so you had to go through a toxic relationship, and we're not going to, you know, it's not about bashing the ex or anything, but like, tell us how, from where you were being the wiser, more evolved, more conscious parent, because we're talking about conscious parenting, where we're aware of how we show up in the world, and the best version of ourselves that we can be, and honoring our children's space to become who they are on their terms, without us trying to control it, right? So that's kind of what conscious parenting is. Dr. Shafali is, if you really want to get involved in understanding conscious parenting, Dr. Shafali is, and I'll put a link, is a great resource. She's a big advocate. She's a family therapist who's been going around the world educating more of us. So she's a great resource. But handing it over to you, Sonia, with that question. How did you, looking back now, how were you able to navigate those different transitions? Because there's a lot of them.
There's so many. There's so many. It's really hard. Honestly, it's really hard. And the importance is getting that support from friends, from family members, in a non-toxic way, in a I'm taking your side as opposed to his side, right? And so that's really, really important. But the most important point that I was getting at was just to make sure that the parents or communicating. And if you have one that is just you're not able to communicating with the child and making the child understand that it needs to be extremely clear that the dynamics between you and the ex is not going to be a conversation with the child, ever.
And that they don't have to choose sides either, because that's the biggest challenge
Right.
that a lot of children have to deal with, is that feeling like they're being disloyal to one parent over the other.
Right, and what that ends up causing, what ends up happening is the adolescent can be then going through the tough time of hearing what mom said and then hearing what dad said, and then the parents struggle in keeping control over that child when one is visiting the other, and that happens a lot. That then it makes it really difficult on the child to feel like they need to protect the other parent, and the other parent can't actually even get a sentence out because that child's already decided, picking sides, right, choosing sides again, and all of these difficulties that come with it. The kids start acting out, and then it becomes, I'm going to spend less time here than there, and then one parent saying, then come live with me, and all of these things happen, and it's really it's a fight between the homes and how much time you're going to spend there. And the kids already feel it. They already feel it without even words being said, right? They feel the energy of mom and dad, whoever they're closest to. And through the whole process, you have to, as a single parent, you have to decide that you're making the transition for the betterment of yourself, first and foremost, and the betterment for the child. If it is a toxic relationship, that you're removing the children from, behavior habits you don't want the kids to be around. There are all of these levels of parenting where you feel like you have to be mama bear, right? And you have to step in and you have to be protective of the child. And to avoid dealing with all of that is making sure that the child does not feel like they have to step into that role at any point. So,
and then the other thing, wouldn't it also be really important to point out here that to also, as adults, be very present to that the child needs to process whatever it is that they're processing in their way, that they don't need to have it, it's not important for them to do it how we think it's best, right? Like, because
exactly.
Right, because what they'll do is they'll shut down and not talk and not connect, and they'll process beliefs that are self-sabotaging and destructive, because they take, what do most kids, like, what is your story, my story, every person that I see that has dealt with drama is like, we have made up this story that it was our fault.
That's right.
So that's why we want to not do that.
Right, and the child does this, the ideal image of what's being hurt, or how they're being hurt, or how they're being treated in this relationship, right? They start to develop a story around that, and the family dynamics, and how to communicate, right? We're their teaching tools as mothers, as parents. We teach our children how to have relationships with other loved ones, friends, boyfriend and girlfriend relationships. All of these things play into what's happening in these dynamics, and even in that step parenting role, right? When you bring a third party in and a fourth party in, creating those relationships and having a new partner there doesn't necessarily mean that the new adult steps into that role as a parent, and keeping that separate. So dad is dad, mom is mom, and that the new partner that comes into the relationship for the child has a different relationship with that child, and that those boundaries around that are set in the beginning, so that there's no question who's doing what and when. And in the midst of it, as moms, we have to protect ourselves in a way where we're constantly just being present and being kind to how the kids are reacting, being kind to ourselves and how we're navigating being both mom and dad.
So can I just add something real quick, just because, you know, we're both very conscious of helping each other use empowering words, because there is power in words. So shifting the idea that we need to protect ourselves, and maybe just adjusting it to say equipped ourselves to make empowered choices would probably be.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. And yes, we always keep each other accountable. And
yes, she keeps me straight all the time.
so keeping that alignment of just being kind to ourselves, right? Being kind to ourselves, and lessening the burden of you have to do everything, right? Feeling like you have to take the place of everything and everyone, and it's all on your shoulder. And that's not what it's about either. You know, it says, the saying is, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
And utilizing that in the most loving way. Allow for what you need from others to come in and help and support you, and reaching out if it's needing counseling for your kids, or if it's reaching out to help with support groups to just better understand, so the kids can better understand the family dynamics, that which helping them learn the adequate and appropriate ways to communicate with everyone is really an important tool to share. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, of what I wanted to express of single parenting and separate parenting, and the roles that we play as moms.
So what would you say to your younger self, the one that had to, because there's a lot of women going through this right now. I have many clients right now going through this transition, and I will share you know, a little bit of an upside in how things are shifting and how that village is being created. But what would you tell your younger self, the one that didn't have the wisdom that you have acquired over these years? Because your son is now going to be, he just turned 22, right?
So 20. Mm-hmm.
20, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep adding years to he just graduated high school, sorry. So he just turned 20. What would you be able to reflect on what you've gone through? Because being one that had a toxic relationship and left that toxic relationship.
And I also have an older 26-year-old as well. So different levels of what kids are going through at different ages show up completely different. So what I would tell my younger self is, one, you don't need to know all the answers. You just need to know that you have to take it one day at a time. Be present enough for yourself, be present enough for your kids to actually hear and listen. And that's honestly what they need more than anything else. Knowing that you are exchanging communication with them, you hear them, as well as honoring what their concerns are, and constantly asking, you know, where are you in this process right now? How do you feel? That is always something that is important. And then sharing how I felt with them more often is what I would tell my younger self, is just to make sure that that is the protocol you put in place and is voiced on the daily, because the emotions are here and they're there and they're everywhere. So just be kind to yourself. You don't need to have all the answers, and actually reach out to resources and support groups to be helpful, and other mindful single moms as well. Bring those in as your friend relationships, not in a toxic way where you use it as a bashing session with the exes, but that you really support each other and you're there for each other for those late night, early mornings, up all night events, emotionally when you're having to deal with it with the kids, so that you have a sounding board and a support of, you know what, I understand you, I hear you, and I honor you as well.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing, because it goes in every process, whether you're in transitions, we don't have the, you know, the roadmap as to what's going to be on the other side of what comes next. So being okay with things not being okay is, I think, the most important thing for all of us, no matter what situation you're in, whether it's coming out of a relationship, out of a job that you really enjoyed, or not getting the job, or, you know, just life, you know, throwing curveballs at you, things that are unexpected. If you can lean in and be okay with not being okay with it, and trusting that there is greater possibility for you and that there is better, I think would really serve a lot of us, you know, going through these different difficulties. And the one thing I did want to share, so, you know, right here, I just kind of pause for a second. Let us know, like, are you going through a transition right now? Are you a newly single parent? What type of support do you need? Have you even paused to ask yourself that question? So that's even a question that we forget to ask, like, what do I need? Right? So, you know, respond in the comments, let us know. Join us on the Facebook, you know, and as we close off here, I do want to share, because this is really significant on how that whole concept of it takes a village. There's, like I said, I have several clients who are going through a similar situation, but it's igniting something very profound in their journey, that it's them doing their work on themselves and investing in their, you know, their well-being in mind, body, and spirit. Because if they don't, nobody else will, right? They're discovering so many amazing things about themselves. But the most significant thing I want to share here is that there are communities being formed. So to solve this problem that a lot of women face of being in that moment where it's like, yeah, you go through the whole separation process and you know, potentially divorce, and, you know, now having to have 2 homes for your kids. There's communities being formed where people are sharing homes, and single moms with kids are coming in and finding homes together. Obviously, you have to be compatible, right? And they're finding the courage, the support, the empowerment, and a safe, happy environment for their kids to transition to. And I think that is really, really beautiful. And it's not just for moms. There's actually a TED Talk that I shared. I'll look it up and try to include it in the links below. But it was really profound, because this woman is sharing her experience about, like, having to navigate through all of that. And then, you know, at first it was kind of like a joke, but it wasn't a joke. She, you know, she reached out to a friend who had just recently gone through that process, and she's going, oh shoot, where am I going to live? Like, my kids, I don't want to pull them out of school. Like, all of these realities start to kick in, and then they just kind of go, do you wanna? Okay, yeah, okay, sounds good. And then they've been doing it for years, and they're so happy, and their kids are so nurtured, and they're nurtured because they're not doing this alone, right? Mm-hmm. And they, as a result of that, they've been able to cultivate healthier relationships with their exes. So that's the value. That's the value of having support. So that's kind of more of the point, you know, not go out and create this you know, this cohabitating situation if it's not reasonable for you, but ultimately just the value of having the right support system, the benefits of that, like how much not only will you benefit, but your children and the relationship with their other parent will benefit from it as well. Right? Because you know, we're only given the tools that we know based on our experiences, and just because they're men doesn't mean that we need to hold them responsible for a lot of things that we contributed to, right? So you know, the signs are always shown to us very early on, and life happens and things change, but we get to honor and respect the other parent, even if they're a toxic human being. there's a level of honoring in knowing that if they are a toxic human being and you were able to manage to get a beautiful child and you got the very best of what was available out of that toxic person, guess what? They're a gift to us in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
So just, you know, and I know that's how you view things, and you don't ever do that whole, and it happens, human beings, right? So when we're in the moment, like, it's hard not to be like, oh my God, but overall, like, you really do try to honor who he is in your life, and the fact that you got, you were given such two tremendous, beautiful gifts from him and the very best of him. So that's the other part. We want to honor the fathers of our children, regardless of where they are in their life. You know, they gave us our greatest treasure, and they're ours for a reason, and then they were the ones to contribute to that process for a reason. And you know, find a little gratitude will shift things in your heart and in your relationships anyway. So did you want to add to anything else there?
And for Father's Day, to honor all those fathers that have stepped in for fathers, and
Yes.
the ones that, you know, our children call dad, that are there for the every, you know, day to day. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be biological
Absolutely.
dads, and sometimes they're more dads than biological fathers. So honoring all the fathers and dads and replacement dads out there for Father's Day.
Absolutely. The guys who have the courage to step up to a role that is probably one of the most difficult things to do, even when they're your own. My dad was one of those, and he, you know, he started off with a big baggage of burdens and things that he came loaded with, but he did the best he could. And, you know, so thank you for that, because it really takes a certain type of individual to love another child that didn't come from them, in with all of their being, and to show up and do the hard game. Because it could be so easy to be able, like, nope, I'm out, right? Like, they have an out card at any point and they choose not to, and that's what's glorious about those kinds of human beings, and all dads. I mean, they all, you know. And then to the fathers who watch over us, right? To your dad, who's always with us, and he smiles whenever we do the show, and I'm feeling his presence now. So hi, Dad. Or Sonia.
Yes,
yeah, right?
He's always with us, and yeah, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Share with us your thoughts. Did you like the show? Are there topics you want us to cover? Let us know. And, you know, shoot us a message if you have a story to share. We would love to hear it and see if it's something that makes sense and fits for our show. All right. All the best. Happy blessings. See you next week, everyone. Much love. And we'll see you soon.
Until next time. Bye-bye.